Hey, you guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks for having us.
So, tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you guys do.
My name is Nathan D. Myers. I'm a artist and a filmmaker. I'm a dad, homeschool dad at that. I am a preacher's kid, third generation preacher's kid. My dad planted churches all over the world. I have been working full time in the arts for the last 25 years. I've worked in the film and music industries, respectively. I've done some live theater where I met Delitha, my lovely wife. And for the last 10 years, we've been producing product together. We've produced a feature together and some shorts, and we've produced some children together. And we have produced Fort Worth Actors Studio, which is a company we own in Texas. And so yeah, we're just weird show people who love the arts, love music, love theater, love film. And I've spent the last 25 years kind of toggling. I got in as an actor, but I also scenic. And if people don't know what that means, a scenic is somebody who scenic paints or sculpts and is capable of maybe sculpting in foam or doing general construction and building for sets and props. And so I was doing both. I would get an acting gig, and then occasionally I get a PA position in an art department. That led to art directing projects, eventually production designing projects, and so I'm just one of those guys that kind of does what's in front of me to do. I still have a talent agent in Los Angeles, and so I still audition on a regular basis and still work on as an actor on a regular basis. But because I love film, I'm often being asked to work on other people's projects, not just as an actor, but about, I don't know, 60, 75% of the time, if I get a phone call from a third party, they usually want me to come production design or art direct something for them, because it's kind of a unicorn gift, I think, amongst filmmakers. It's one of those things not every filmmaker is doing. And so yeah, that's a little bit about me. Delitha can tell you a little more about her.
Yeah, I'm Delightha, and I grew up as a really introverted, shy kid who wanted to be on the stage. So it was a constant struggle for me. And finally, in towards the end of high school, I came out of my shell, and then I went on and got a bachelor's of fine arts in musical theater and got a master's degree in drama. I studied abroad in Ireland, and throughout all of that, I also met Nathan and we, got married, and then we kind of did our own thing for a while. Then we had our first child, Aurora, and then that kind of inspired us coming together to work as a couple and create things for kids for my daughter, because we noticed a lot of things that she was watching weren't really appropriate and definitely didn't have God at the center or at the heart of the programming. And so we came together and we started doing something about it. And now I have her. She's 12. She's going to go into seventh grade this year. I'm homeschooling her. Later today, we have an interview for a new music school. We'll see how it goes. And then I have a 3-year-old son who is just the opposite of everything she is. And that's been the curveball this last 3 years. Is
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, it's when you have kids and then you start to watch what they're watching and you're like, I thought this was a kid show. And like my daughter was watching Peppa Pig and then she goes, I want to have two mommies, like one of the characters in Peppa Pig. I was like, wait a second, what? And I'm like, all right, baby, we can't watch Peppa Pig anymore. I like nothing is safe anymore unless you're like actually going and pursuing like something Christian basic.
Yeah. We had that moment too when my daughter was 4. I was like, oh, we went that way. Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, no more Peppa.
or Peppa Pig. So you guys worked on The Chosen too, yeah?
Actually, my relationship to The Chosen is kind of John the Baptist-y, is what Jodie Quint, who's the head of operations at The Chosen, who they call Mom, uh, kind of alluded that she said I was a little bit like John the Baptist, in as much as, not that I didn't play John the Baptist. Let's just put it that way. I'm not on the show. I don't work for the show. I actually designed Capernaum Studios and Gardens between 2005 and 2010 and helped Tammy Lane Productions. And Tammy Lane owns all of that out there in Poolville, Texas. And we designed and installed the village, which is at the time was just called Capernaum First Century Village, to look like a Jewish village, first century reconstruction or replica. And we were just doing short films and retreats and things out there in those days. We added the gardens in 2008 to 2010. And then Dallas Jenkins found the sets and the gardens and everything. I think probably 2016, 17. I bumped into him out there pre The Chosen, just as their Kickstarter was taking off and everything was happening. Um, and uh, and so if you watch The Chosen seasons 1 through 3 and you see them in Capernaum, and it's interesting because we called it Capernaum, but they called it Capernaum in the show. They picked it as Peter's hometown, and that's what they did. So, and so I've met a lot of those people over the years. I've worked with several of those people. I know so many of the cast and crew because the faith-based movie industry is kind of a one big happy family, and there's a lot of crossover project to project. And in fact, Delitha and Jordan Ross did shows together at Casa Manana years ago.
Plays Little John.
He plays Little John. And so, we just knew a lot of people associated with it. And then it was very strange last year, and I don't really have anything to do with the show. I just know everybody that works on it. And when I watch the show, I'm looking at sets that I built, and which is kind of takes me out of the willing suspension of disbelief factor sometimes. And but I last year just got a random phone call from a filmmaker friend who lives in the neighborhood in Midlothian, Texas, where the sets for The Chosen are, and he can see the sound stages from the end of his driveway. He doesn't have anything to do with The Chosen other than he has a lot of friends that work on the show because it's all one big happy family there. And he said, "Hey, Camp Hoblitzel is looking for help to direct film camp over at Camp Hobbitzel, which is where The Chosen is. That's where their sets are in Texas." And he said, "Would you be interested in helping direct film camp with those guys?" I said, "Well, let me talk to them. That sounds fun." That resulted in a relationship with Camp Hoblitzel, which is a Salvation Army family camp. It's 1,500 acres. That's where Dallas moved their operation when they left Capernaum Studios. They went over to Camp Hoblitzel and they built more sets, and they built a really incredible soundstage operation. And and so I jumped on the team to help direct film camp last year. This year, the guy who I replaced the guy who directed film camp last year to just be the top of their film camp food chain. So I'm actually directing film camp next week. So we start August the 2nd, run through August the 9th. And it was funny. I ran into Jody Quint in December, and she called me John the Baptist. She said, "You're the guy who built that village where we did seasons 1 through 3." And I said, "Yeah, that's me." And she said, "You'll be back." She said, "You're going to be back." And I said, "Well, we'll see about that. I haven't actually worked on the show yet." And she said, "I just know." She said, "I'm telling you, I know you'll be back." And sure enough, couple of weeks later is when Casey Bilbrey called me and said, "Hey, would you direct film camp this year with us?" And so I have this very interesting relationship with the show and with those guys. And people ask me all the time, are they what they seem to be? And I'll say, well, yeah, they really are. They love Jesus, and there's a really cool core of people at the center of that operation who I really do believe love the Lord and are trying to do the right thing. And despite any controversy or mixed feelings people might have about that show, there's some really wonderful people working on it. And I feel really privileged to just kind of have I don't know, a supportive, holding the space kind of relationship to them. And then also to now camp, which is, by the way, is kids age 13 to college students up to 23. It's film studies. It's acting for camera studies this year with Kirk Wohler, who plays Gaius on the show, and BJ Foreman, who's the art department coordinator. is the musical theater director for the musical theater side of camp, and Elitha is directing music for the musical theater side of camp. Jazzy Dash from the TV series Vindication is our first AD. Ladrell James is our DP. Brian Gallion, Dima Yakovenko, and Christine Gallion, who are all friends of mine in our production circle, are coming in teaching location sound and audio and parts of acting for camera and things like that. So it's a really awesome experience. My relationship continues to deepen with a lot of those people as time goes on. So, but that's kind of a little explanation for what is my relationship to the show, or who am I in that circumstance. But I'm just a guy who 15 years ago said, Lord, what do you want me to do right now? And he said, go build this village on this dusty hillside in Poolville, Texas. And we all laughed and thought it was ridiculous. And I mean, honestly, it at the time was such a bizarre thing to be asked to do. And we had Tammy's dream, and it really is Tammy's dream. We had Tammy's checkbook, which was allowing us to do, and then we had her trust. You know, she'd just say, design something, and we design it, take it to her, and she'd say, I love it, build it. And that was a very unique opportunity. And now that that's happened, The Chosen is a wonderful thing that has come up out of that. But there have been 170 faith-based movies or TV series shot out there on those sets at this point. And so those sets, despite how ridiculous it was and seemed like a build it and they will come kind of situation at the time, have been used by every denomination across the board. Everybody's using those to promote kingdom teaching. And so that's a really neat thing to have been a part of. And so that's why Jody called me John the Baptist. She was like, you precede all of that. And so and I feel really humbled and excited to have been a part of it. It's been neat to watch it kind of explode. And now that The Chosen went global, Capernaum Studios gets tourism all the time. People come through there and check out the sets. And so it's just kind of a fun thing.
So God told you to make this set, and at the time it didn't make any sense to you?
Well, you know, I was about 28 when we started building, and I'd just gotten married, and I needed a job. And working with Tammy at the time was just a blessing, because it just was like I just jumped right into an associate producer's job position with them. I worked with her for about a year, and then I felt like I needed to go. Like I was, so I left the company in 2006. In 2008, I was touring with a band. I was still working with the Children's Theater where Delitha and I met. I had done a couple of movies at that point. I was just doing other stuff. I had kind of moved on mentally. I was supporting a ministry that my dad planted in Fort Worth. And so, you know, we were just had a full life doing all kinds of other creative things. I was also working part-time at Starbucks. And Tammy Lane walked into my Starbucks in 2008, and she said, and it was funny, that's, I jokingly tell people that's kind of like in our culture in North Texas, it's kind of like Paris Hilton, Christian Paris Hilton stepping down into your Starbucks. And she's a wonderful lady. And it was a little out of character for her to show up and just be in my Starbucks. And I knew she was there to see me, but I was like, what do you want, Tammy? And she laughed and she said, I need your help on something. Would you meet me at the ranch? And I met her out there, and they had started to build something we had drawn in 2005, because we'd picked a location for the village and all of that, but the it wasn't quite right. And she was looking at it, and she said, what do you think? And I said, well, it looks awful. And she said, can you help us fix it? And I said, well, let's don't fix anything from this point forward. Let me just jump back on the team. Let me lead from here forward. And so we finished out the entire village at that point, and then built the gardens. That season, though, of my life was just kind of, okay, Lord, is this what you want me to do? And Tammy's got a big vision and had a lot of a lot of I was confident she knew exactly what she wanted to do. It seemed a little crazy, but at 28, needing a job and also feeling invited into that, I just felt as it wasn't, it was my creative opportunity to go express myself. Tammy opened that door really, and ultimately at the core of whose vision is this and who's being obedient to the Lord in terms of a call. I look at that and say, well, Tammy's really the one who heard that and said and knew what she needed to do with her resources and that she wanted to do that. Everyone thought it was a little strange. I thought it was cool. I just thought it was also kind of ridiculous. I remember being out on the hillside out there, and there's nothing out there. There's nothing out there. And now today there's several sound stages, there's workshops, parking lots, road infrastructure. There's an entire operation there now that is 15 years later. And so it was really cool to be there at the beginning of that with somebody who had some vision and some money and to be able to just support someone else's vision. I've heard it said that before you can really uh, fully express who you are, um, building your own visions, it's healthy and good and humble to learn how to support other people's visions and help them bring their ideas to life. And so, um, on that level, I felt privileged and humbled to be a part of it in those days. Um, Watching it unfold over the years has been the fun part, is watching like, well, the seeds that were planted and go, well, we believed that this might happen, but you just don't know. And now we're looking back on it today going, wow, this is incredible. This is crazy awesome what God has done with it. So at that time in my life, it was the need for work, the humility of feeling like I'd stumbled into a weird but unique opportunity, and we just went with it, and my dragged my poor wife along for several of these bizarre adventures. So,
Love it. So how can Christian creatives reclaim storytelling for kingdom influence?
oh boy, um, Christian creatives need to get connected to the head, which is Christ, because I do know people in the church who are disconnected from the head, and um, and they need to get back into that. They need to be taking their cue, like we try to do, uh, from the great storyteller himself, who told stories in parables. And the parabolic teaching is the kind of teaching the world really needs. The church half the time doesn't even understand what Jesus said, much less somebody else who writes a parabolic story and maybe shares that back to the church. We're trying to do a little more of that, approach storytelling through the lens of how do you take a how do you take a truth and wrap it in a package that ears can hear, and then put it out there and say, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. I think that's how Christians are supposed to be taking back storytelling for the kingdom, is tapping into Christ, tapping into the Spirit, asking for God to lead them into what's the next thing. What do you want me to make? What do you want me to write? Um, and really opening themselves up to be a conduit for truth and a conduit for those kinds of stories. A lot of people in faith-based market are writing for the church, and and that's okay. People write worship music for the church too, and that's okay. But there's a lot of for us, by us type of storytelling. Those people, and you have to be careful with that if you're telling stories in the church, because you can border on surrounding ourselves with teachers who will give us what our itching ears want to hear. And there's a lot of that type of storytelling in the faith-based marketplace, unfortunately. And there's a lot of contrivance because they look at the market first, they look at the money, they look at what can sell, what will people buy, And I'm not sure that's the appropriate way to be trying to package truth. If you want to package propaganda or a garbage cheeseburger to try to get people to buy it, that's how you do that. You look at, well, what kind of garbage will these people eat? And you package that up and give it to them. I don't think Christian creatives ought to be in that space functioning that way. They ought to be saying, Lord, what do you want us to do? And he'll give you something ridiculous. And, well, I want you to write a movie about this, or write a story about this, or go build a village on a dusty hillside in Texas. And you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. How is that going to achieve your purpose? And, uh, but it might accidentally achieve his purpose just because you obeyed it, and you were obedient to some random call. So I think Christian creatives need to be more courageous, less concerned about how much money they are going to make off of a particular product, and just be obedient to the artistic, creative conduit thing that's happening, and write down what they are given, right? Write that down. And if it's awkward, or it's culturally challenging, or it's controversial, then that sounds a little bit like Jesus to me. So I think that would be a good thing to do.
I think that's a really great message to not just look at where the money is. Because we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this, and it might be really simple to be like, well, I see all these guys doing like bro marketing strategies and they're making a ton of money doing that. But then you got to look at, is this what God is calling me to do in my business?
Right. We've been asked to make the dog bigger on our poster so that, the kids will like it more and things like that. And there are some things that are just natural. Once you've got a product, you're taking it into the market, there's an aspect of that type of just logic and reason you look at and you go, well, there's some things that just kind of make sense if we want to reach the broadest audience possible. And I'm not talking about working against logic necessarily, but if the I mean, you have to be careful, you guys, because if the product that you're creating and you're doing that, you're like, well, in order to make money, I got to do this, and in order to hit the target audience, I've got to do this, and in order to hit that demographic, I got to do this. How much prostitution are you involved in personally in order to get yourself to that point? Where are you selling yourself short? And where are you selling the gospel short, or where are you selling the kingdom short in the process to get to your audience? I think you need to be careful with that, and make sure that first things are first, because God can work despite all of that. He really can. He turns logic upside down for, really at times, and he opens doors that no man can open, and he shuts doors no man can shut. And he will work wonders just out of your obedience, despite you, and in spite of everything you've contrived or set in motion and you think is perfectly logical. And he might just thwart all of it to show off, and do something ridiculous, because he has chosen the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. And so I feel like you just need to be walking with him, keep in step with him, and then go do it. And if he's asking you to do something that seems a little off, that doesn't seem like what everybody else is doing, you might want to consider doing that. So
That's good. Why do you think faith-based storytelling matters now more than ever?
hmm.
Well, I know that in the 50s, people were concerned about, Elvis Presley and his rock and roll music. But now, to me, we've got bigger issues, and that the media, Hollywood, whomever, are really coming after not only our kids, but us as well. Just with all of we're all on social media. We all have seen YouTube, and the ads and the shows and everything are just inundated with the world, and it's not inundated with God at all. There's some statistics out there that what is being produced right now, is it 235%? There's 235% more being produced for adult.
It's actually, I think it's 260.
Oh no, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 265% more is being put out there for adult consumption than family friendly or kid friendly material. And then if you look at it, there's only 15% of things that are appropriate for family watching. And even less than that has God in it. And so now more than ever, because back in the day, even during when Elvis Presley first came out, well, it was a very conservative um, world back then. Like we had blue laws, and we had, people went to church, and now it's so not cool to go to church, it seems like, or whatever. And so it's such a different landscape that we're all in right now. And so more than ever, it's really important that people of faith step up, those that are creative, and start making things that kids can watch, that adults can watch, but that brings us back to the things that matter and the things that are true.
Oh, that's good. So when you guys are working together as a couple, what does that look like, and how do you protect your marriage as you go after all the things that God has in store?
Well, you see this black eye right
That was
here,
from her, right?
That was
and
wasp.
I was I have a really puffy eye. I look a little bit like Sloth from Goonies right now, and because I got stung by a wasp earlier. So I'm joking. My wife did not punch me, but no, we actually um, I, I
I don't
think
know. How long have we been married? 20 years?
20 years.
Yeah, so 20 years. So like the first 10, we did not really work together. Sometimes we would be musical directors together. And I mean, I guess that's how we met, was doing musical direction. So we met working together. So
Yeah.
that's kind of our foundation, is we were working together. He fell in love with me because I was on the stage directing children. I was working and he fell in love with me. So I think we have that foundation of work. And then, over those first 10 years, we kind of drifted and did our own thing. And these last 10 years, we've really come together.
I think part of it too is Delitha's background is musical theater, and mine was too, and that's kind of where we started. But I started to get very interested in film, and I don't think at that time. I think she was humoring the idea that I was going that way. Even though she did some movies and she's done some TV, she's actually gone out. Just as an actor, she's been able to book stage and screen. But I think that she was looking at our paths as kind of separate, like, well, he's going down the film road, I'm still mostly doing the stage thing, and we weren't working together. But in 2014, I had at that point produced 3 features with friends and some shorts, and we had already built Capernaum, and all of that was all done. There was a lot of water under the bridge at that time, and my parents retired from full-time church planting and ministry and moved to Tennessee, and all my family vacated Texas except for us, and I started to feel a little isolated and alone, and we sort of kind of kicked out some renters of our original, like, first home, where when we first got married. Their lease ended and we moved them out. We moved back into Fort Worth, and I felt really strange there. I felt like I had moved, and I'd been in Fort Worth for 10 years, but when I moved, or in the area, and when I moved back into the city, I was like, I don't really feel like I am from here. Something feels off. Like I felt isolated and out of place suddenly. And I started praying about, well, Lord, what is wrong? Like, what is going on? And I got a really clear call to sell the house and sell a truck. And if you've ever experienced something like that, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what are we gonna do? And there was silence. It was like, just do it, and I just, you make assumptions. I was like, well, I guess I'm getting a normal job, or we're moving. I don't know what's going on. I was at that time feeling rather jaded about the movie industry and the work that I'd done with friends. It wasn't particularly missional. They were just, mainstream movie projects that friends were making. I was doing at that time, I think, what Julia Cameron calls shadow artistry, where you get real close to other people's campfire and you get really close to what they're doing, because you don't really have the courage to do it on your own, or you don't feel like you are ready or you have the tools. So you stand really close to other artists, and until you maybe feel a little bit more prepared or ready. And so I did a lot of shadow artistry, and I think the Lord was calling me out of that season of my life. He's like, "You're ready. You're done." And so a friend of mine called me in May 2014, said, "Hey, I want you to produce and direct a couple of faith-based movies that I have on my desk. I've got a couple of scripts." And I said, "Thanks for the offer. I'm feeling jaded. I think I'm getting out of the industry." And and he said, "I don't believe you. I will see you in July." And we sold our house and went away and did some praying, and then kind of got sent back to Texas with a mission. And we kind of prayed about it irrespective of one another. And you know that it's right when, like, when I went to her and said, "I think I know what we need to do," and she was like, "Let me stop you. I know we're going to go back to Texas and make a movie, so let's just get on with it." And and that's what happened, actually. Like, I thought maybe I'm getting out of the industry, but actually we just got sent back in with a little bit more of a mission. And that was the prompt from the Lord, was just like, go back in, make something, just keep me in mind this time, and be more awake about it, more aware. And like I said earlier, stay connected to the head, and don't get disconnected and distracted by all of this other stuff. But that's the vine and the branches. You'll remain in me, bear much fruit. So that's kind of where we went. We ended up back, uh, and that was the coming together for us too, which I think is the point of this. Is we were very parallel. And then she migrated over to join me, and we actually started writing and producing together in a serious way for the first time. And I kind of think that was maybe the point all along.
Maybe. And there have been ups and downs in our relationship. And it's just been trying to figure out, like, who does what, where can we collaborate, where do I need my own personal space, and what feels like, collaboration, and what feels like maybe he's picking on me sometimes, that sort of thing. That's just my personality. Sometimes I take things too personally. But as far as like protecting our marriage in this, it's been hard. It really has. But we're still at it. We're 20 years in, and and having a 3-year-old, I don't think it helps anything.
Oh my gosh. There's so
No,
much.
it's funny.
Much.
No, well, it doesn't speed up any of those processes at all in terms of what we're trying to do.
But we have a
From a
good
work
sense of
point.
humor.
Yeah.
And we know how we can like downshift at the end of the day, and how we can relax and hang out and just turn some things off.
In truth, Rachel, like, we in 2020, both my best friend and her best friend both went through divorces during the pandemic. And that was a really rough season for everyone, not just the pandemic, but there was a lot of other spiritual pressure that was on everyone, right? And we were under the same gun, and we walked through a pretty difficult season ourselves, just in our own marriage and in our own relationship. And this is after we started production on this particular movie. I mean, the movie had already festivaled once at that point, and we had just put it back in post production for a second post to fix some things before we distributed. And then the pandemic kind of let loose. We walked through some pretty dark months in that season, even in our own relationship, trying to find uh, the heart of our own marriage and things like that. The 3-year-old that we have today is a byproduct of the fact that we did not separate, but we attempted to come back together, and we came back together so well that we now have a 3-year-old.
Amen.
And so,
Well, speaking of children, if you're on video, you can see mine decided to pop in, and she wants to make her podcasting debut. So I'm going to let her say hi to you really,
Awesome.
and then she's going to, oh, maybe. You want to say hi? Nope. Wait. Oh, don't break all the tech. Come on. All right. Just wanted to talk until it got real.
Yeah.
yeah, she's adorable.
Thank you. Oh man, that's really funny. So tell us about the new project that you're working on, Aria Appleton Shines.
Aria Appleton Shines is out there. It's in the marketplace. It's on Prime Video. You want to tell them a little bit about the movie?
Yeah, sure. The movie is a musical movie. It's a kids' comedy satire or a family satire. It's in the vein of movies like Diary of a Wimpy Kid or High School Musical or we love campy kids movies like that, and we particularly love campy public school movies. Everything from Ferris Bueller to Mean Girls have been guilty pleasure movies of ours over the years. And Aria Appleton Shines is about a mean girl, and she narrates her own story about how she turns over a new leaf. And so we took our cue from some of the satirical storytelling of that genre, and after Delitha wrote the original seed screenplay for that, I looked at it and I said, it'd be a lot more fun if we told a couple of these things with song, or we did some of this with music, or we did it with songs. And so we revamped it as a more musical movie, and we took some of the character arc story elements and we told those things through songs. And so it's not a traditionally structured movie musical, even like Rodgers and Hammerstein. It's not like that. It's just a very musical movie, and some of the story is told through those songs. And those songs are generally Aria Appleton's imagination and how she's kind of contextualizing her experience, and then she narrates that from the present, as a moral tale and a warning to others about how not to do what she did, dealing with issues of self-aggrandizement and seeking after fame and fortune and the dangers of ambition. That's kind of what she's talking about. The themes are really strong related to tech use in the home and kids with phones and internet access and um, online bullying and the things that can happen in that space. So it's got some really strong, relevant themes for families. And we're hoping not only is it a really fun, entertaining watch, but it inspires conversations that families can have at home on those subjects that make it a little easier for parents to talk to their kids about that stuff.
Cool. I'm gonna look it up because always looking for like actually appropriate things that my children can watch, which is again really hard to find these
It
days.
is, yeah. And there's no worldly agendas in it. There's no language at all. We talk about God, and we have an awesome homeschool family that Aria meets, and she is brought into their world where they, pray before dinner and that sort of thing. So it's really fun, and it's just kind of represents kind of who we are on a plate.
So fun. Cool. Where can we connect with you guys?
So if you go to ariaappleton.com, that's ARIA, Apple, like you eat it, and then TON, ariaappleton.com, you can find us all the things. So it'll take you out to Prime Video where you can find the movie or the soundtrack. Soundtrack's available on iTunes, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, all that stuff. And it'll take us out to all the socials. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and other things.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, ariaappleton.com links out to all of those places. The best way you guys can support us is check out the movie at Prime Video, and you can rent it or VOD it. You can buy it there. And then once you've watched it, please leave us a 5-star Google review and an Amazon and the Amazon review right there in Prime. That would be super helpful for us.
We also made a parent and leaders guide so that if you do want to have these good discussions, often, you watch things and you go, oh, great, I have to have this conversation with my kid now. Great. But this movie will hopefully help you have positive conversations that you do want to have. And so in the leader's guide, there's 6 of the themes are talked about, like honoring the parents, technology usage, dying to self, all these things. So there's 6 themes that we talk about. We put scripture, aligning with those things. And there's some questions you can ask. And so it's just a great resource for people who want to dive deeper into conversations with their kids. And you can find that at givesendgo.com/Aria Appleton, which is also found on ariaappleton.com. And you can link out to that if that's something you want in your home.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited to check out the movie. Thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate you and your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Great to be here.